Hello and welcome to assignment number 5, creating elevations using Sketchup and Photoshop. The first thing you want to do is navigate to Blackboard and click on the assignment to get to the assignment overview. Then you want to navigate down and you want to click on the resource folder hyperlink. You want to select Open in Drive. And I'm just going to select all my items and right click and download. And while that's happening, I'm going to go to my libraries and I'm going to copy over my folder, my new project folder template. I'm going to go in here and I think this is going to be A number 5. And this is elevation using SketchUp and Photoshop. Okay. Navigate to my downloads folder. I'm going to double click on that zip to open it. And I'm going to go over here as well. I'm going to go inside SketchUp and I'm going to pull my completed and final context SketchUp models over to that my SketchUp folder. Go into layout, pull over my layout, go into site imagery, and I'm going to put my trees in site imagery and close that out. Alright. Now I want to navigate back to SketchUp and I'm going to open up the completed model and the final context model. I'm close to these dialog boxes that I don't need. Alright. Oops. And then I'm actually going to minimize, depending on what you have on your screen, I'm going to minimize my final context model. And I'm going to go into my completed model. Whoops. And I'm going to click on it. You'll notice that you only see the concrete and the pavers and the granite bench. Everything is there. It's just things are turned off to make this run faster. And then it's also been grouped. So I'm going to select that group and I'm going to hit Control-C or Command-C, depending on what system you're using. And I'm actually just going to delete this. I don't need this any longer. And go back to my final context model. And I'm going to edit and just paste in place. Okay. So now we see our design pop into place in the context model. So we can see it all together now. Great. So now what we're ready to do is to create some scenes for our sections or elevations so that we can take it into layout to prep it to bring it to Photoshop for a finished render for our presentation board. So what we're going to do first is make sure that you have your tools up, your section tools. I'm right clicking on mine and saying customize toolbar, and I'm going to find the section display, section cuts, and the section plane tool, and I just drag those icons to my bar. So you want to have your section tools. Alright. I'll put myself on layer 0 as well. Now you can select the sections that you want. We want to focus on our core area, obviously. I'm just going to do a straight on view looking straight kind of north, and then looking towards the west. So the first thing you have to do is put yourself on layer 0. I'm going to go to my section cuts tool, and it gives you kind of a window pane, and I'm going to make sure that snaps to that granite. So I'm just kind of snapping to that. And to help me see more easily, I'm also just going to turn off my context trees. Okay, yeah, that's better. Where are we? Oh. Well, before I do that, apparently it's on the wrong layer, so let me grab that and just put that on 0 instead. Okay, there we go. Now I'll turn off my context trees. There. Okay. Now go back to I'm on layer 0, so I'm going to go back to my tool, section plane tool, and snap to that. When I snap to that, you see that the plane tool is created and it cuts that whole, it's basically a section tool, and it cuts a section through the whole, your whole model. What I want to do, I want to get more of that area, so I'm going to select the section plane window and just kind of drag it out the other way. And I want to make sure that I kind of touch that touch the curb to make sure that I can see my stone pavers below. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit just so I can kind of eyeball that. I'm just pulling, so right about there is probably good for me. Okay, so now what I want to do is right click and say align view. Alright, then I want to make sure I go to camera and make sure that parallel projection is selected so it's a straight on view. So do not use orbit now or you'll lose that view. And I can see that I'm able to see from this my curb and where it rises, and also my granite bench. So that's looking pretty good for me. You can toggle on and off that cut by selecting this icon, which is the toggle section display. And you can also just completely toggle the section cuts on and off with this icon. Alright, so we have that. Now what I want to do is I want to start turning on my layers. This is going to be my first section, but I'm going to have obviously more elements turned on. So I'm going to start turning my stuff back on. So my building's going to come back on. And really just everything else. I'm going to grab these and just turn everything back on. And turn on my green screen as well, finally. Okay. Now you should be in presentation mode. That's the way that the file should have opened. So your shadow should be casting. I'm going to kind of zoom in here. It should be dragging a little bit. If it's dragging, it's because we have so many faces that are open in the model now. But I'm just going to try to zoom in a little bit so I can see a little bit better. Okay, so now that I have that created, I'm going to right click up here and say add. And it's going to be scene number 6. I'm actually going to go to that. Let me say done generate, cancel. Alright, and then I'm going to call this section 1. And I'm going to say all veg. And I'm going to do that because we're actually going to replace some of the schematic trees here. And I'm also not really crazy about the way the Zelkovas are looking, so we're going to replace those with trees in Photoshop. So we need the ability to be able to turn those things on and off. But I need the reference point so I know what size they are and actually where they go in this section. So I'm going to say all veg for that one. Camera location, yes. Visible layers, yes. Active section plane, yes. Style, everything else, yes. And then I'm going to select update. Update. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go back to my layers. Let me minimize that scenes for a moment. Go back to my layers, and I'm going to turn off my context trees. So my context trees, I'm going to turn those off. And I'm also going to turn off those Zelkova because I'm not crazy about those. Okay, so now I'm going to create another scene. I'm going to right click and say add. Go back to my scenes. And I'm going to call this section 1 good veg. It's the vegetation we're going to keep. And update. Okay, now make sure that when you're exporting or you're saving these scenes that your section is displayed, but also that you have your section plane window. You don't want to see that. So you want to make sure that you have the icon selected where you don't see that. Okay, toggle that off. So now we're going to keep on going. So I actually want to see it now, so I can see what we're doing. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize that scene. So you can go back to layers just to make this thing run faster. I'm going to turn off that the landscape material again. Just turn it all off. And I'm going to turn building off again as well. And again, this is just a quick way to work. When you're working, you're moving things around, you just turn things off that you don't need. Alright, so that's my first section. Now I'm going to get another one coming through here. So I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to use my section tool. And I'm going to grab this face. Alright, so it does the same thing. Alright. Zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. I'm going to select the section plane that I want. Oops. And I'm just going to move it back a little bit. Just to hit that curb. That looks good to me. Right there. Then I'm going to right click on it and say it should be the active cut. Then I'm going to say align view. And I am going to kind of zoom in some so we can see a little bit better this time. Okay, so the view should be aligned. My camera should be the same way, parallel projection. Good. And now I want to turn off the section plane, toggle it off. I don't want to see them. Good. And I'm going to turn things back on again. So I'll turn on my building again. I'm going to turn on the context trees. And then all of my plant material. Okay. And actually, I noticed that I'm cutting into my building for this, and I don't want to do that. So let me turn that stuff back off again, and I'll just adjust that. So y'all don't cut the building. I want to see the face of the building in this. Okay. So let me actually zoom back a little bit and let me toggle those back on so I can see it. Let me zoom out some. I'm just going to grab it, use my move tool, come back. Guess the building will start right about there. That's good. And again, align view. Great. Let me zoom in so we can see. And I will toggle the section plane windows off so we don't see them. And I'll turn everything back on again. Okay, great. Now I'm going to save a scene. So add. And let me just go back to my scenes here, and 8's going to be section 2, all veg, and I'll update that. Update. Then I will go back to my layers. Minimize that for a moment. I'll turn off my context trees. And I'll turn off those Zelkovas again. Okay. Then I'll go to my bar here and right click again. Go to my scenes. 9. This is going to be section 2. We'll call that the good veg again. Okay. Then I just want to update that. Update. So now I just want to save this. I'm going to call it save as. And I will call it my Let's call it A5 model, A5 final model. Let it save. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and close that. I don't need that in SketchUp anymore. We're going to transition into layout. And if we need it, we'll just come back to it. So I'll quit SketchUp. And now what I want to do is navigate to that my folder, my layout, and open up that layout. And you'll see within this template that you have a project title waiting kind of for you to fill in, and the project address, student name, placeholder date, and also in this case I'm using a logo that I've created, but you should also put your logo in here. So the project title is going to be Elevations with SketchUp and Photoshop. And I believe the project address is NCANT State University, Greensboro, NC, North Carolina. Let's spell that all out. Alright, student name. I'll just put my name here. And the date is going to be Alright, so that part's done. So now what I want to do is make sure that I'm on the right layer. I'm going to make sure I'm on viewports here. And I'm going to go File. And the first thing that I want to do is insert a plan diagram key for my elevation. So I'm going to go File, Insert. And I'm going to navigate actually to that previous plan view that I had. So it should be in my completed pieces. Oops, projects here, plan view diagram, yeah, and it should be that JPEG that you saved out. So I have my JPEG, and obviously it's big and it's to scale. This doesn't need to be in scale now because I'm using it as basically a legend or a key, but it does have a graphic scale and a north arrow that are still attached to it so that people can use it as a reference. So I'm just going to kind of shrink this down holding Shift and just let it sit there for a moment. In that corner of that sheet. Now what I want to do is go File, Insert, and I'm going to navigate to my desktop and navigate to the folder. Go to my A5 final model. Okay, so when you do that, it pulls up the last saved position from your model, and you see we have our, I believe this is section 2 with the good trees. So what I want to do, this is section, I guess it really doesn't matter what order they're in, this came in first. We'll put it down here anyway. This is going to be section 2, and I am going to size it to the size that I kind of want it to be. I'm just dragging the window out some. Okay, that looks good to me. And momentarily while I resize this, I'm just going to turn off the auto render so it won't be so lagging. And also I'll just kind of bring this down anyway. And it'll say preserve size on, preserve scale on resize. And I'll render that. Okay. Alright, there we go. Alright, so now that I have that, what I want to do is set the scale. So I'm going to right click on this and just go to scale and select the 1/4 inch and re-render it. Okay, so I'm just going to double click in this and pan around in the window to shift it up. Okay, double click. Hold shift and just pull this up so we can see our model. Come down a little bit. Oh, too much. There we go. So that looks pretty good to me. All right, I'll let that go. Great. Now I will get this thing tagged, and what I'll do is just minimize my dimension styles and layers for now. In the scrapbook, you want to go to your elegant, and I'm going to navigate over to my tags here, and I'm just going to grab one of these project title tags. So you're going to click on it. Oops. And drag it over. And we're going to drop it. And that's a little bit tiny, so I'm just going to click on it. Let me zoom in some. And just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to zoom in here now again, and I'm going to modify some of this text fields. I'm double clicking here, double click. I'm going to say Windows and then show fonts. And I want to be consistent, so I want to make this Century Gothic as well. I want to make it a little bit bigger. So that looks good to me. We'll call it 15. Come out here. I'm going to make this black too. And these are going to be 1/4 inch. Equals 1 foot. And we'll say 0 inches. Okay, and we'll make that a little bit bigger too. How about we make that 10? Okay, and then I'll go back here to that, and I want to make that black. So go here, my color, and I'll make that bigger. We'll make that 10 as well. We'll make that 12 actually. And in this is going to be my section 2, so I'm going to say 02. I'm going to go to the A, the last one. I'm going to make that 12 as well. And instead of being A, it's going to be really just S for section. Alright, so that's looking good now. And I'm also going to double click and go and select the boxes that surround these. So that box, I'm holding shift in the line. And the stroke, I'm going to call that stroke 1 or 1.25. Go back in here and make sure that the stroke is showing on those as well. Okay, yeah, that looks good to me. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name this one. Double click in here too for the title actually and name it. I'm going to call this, we're calling these elevations actually and not sections. So we'll call this E for elevation. Elevation, and this is going to be actually, elevation west facing. Alright. So now we got the tag and that looks good. Okay. So now that I have that, I'm going to select both of these items and together. And I'm going to hold Alt and just drag it up to copy them. So I have 2 of them. So I'm going to do 2 sets here. So I'll have that. Okay. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go to at section 2 good veg. I'm going to go to section 1 good veg, and I'll just render that out. Okay, same thing, I'm going to right click on it, right click, oops, Control Z that, click on it, right click, scale, and it's going to be the 1/4 inch as well. And I'm just going to say render. Of course I see nothing. I'm going to double click, hold shift, and bring my model up so I can see it. Bring it over so it's in the right position. Okay, that looks good to me. Let it go. Okay, I'll click out. All right, great. So now I have two elevations pretty quick. I'm going to go ahead and change and update this information as well. So I'm just going to zoom in. Double click in here, and I'm going to call this 1, and we'll say this one is going to be kind of north facing, isn't it? Okay. Great. And I notice now that because of that I can just make this bigger. Just kind of, maybe for now let's leave that like that. Alright, so now that I have that, I'm gonna save this. Let me go to my desktop and make sure that I'm in layout, and I'm just gonna call this A5 layout. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to demonstrate and create these section lines to show where these sections are being cut from. So I'm going to go back to my scrapbook and scroll over until I grab these section icons. I'm going to grab it, the whole thing. Alright, and just kind of pull it over. And zoom in, and I'm going to click on that and just want to rotate that. That looks about right to me. Alright, so that's really the first section. Now I can make this bigger by kind of scaling it out, so that people can see and identify where they're looking. So that's going to be the first one, and that's going to be my E01. So I'm just going to zoom in and double click on this information, double click the change, and that's going to be E, and this is going to be 01. Okay, now let's close out of that. Alright, so there's the first one. Now I'll just grab that same one really and just make a copy of it, and I'll rotate it the other way. And kind of, oops. Bring it down and rotate it a little bit more so it kind of lines up. Maybe a little bit more. That looks good. Zoom in, just grab my hand tool and do something like and this one's going to be E2. Okay, then I'll just kind of, whoops, grab all those and just make them all a little bit smaller so it'll fit in here, kind of like that. So now we have a nice reference for which direction we're looking with the section. All right, so again, I'm just going to save that. Great, so now we had that, save that out. So now what we need to do is add some dimensions to this. So I'm going to kind of zoom in. I'm going to go to my dimension tool here, click that. And say from, for instance, I'm going to dimension from each tree to each tree, just to kind of show you how this would work. So I'm going to grab here, that's a point for me. I'm just going to come down and kind of to the end and pull that down. And when you do that, you'll see 734 dash an eighth of an inch. And what I want to do is go to my dimension style and say architectural. And we'll set that to an eighth of an inch. So it's giving us 61 feet and 2/8 of an inch. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and just dimension the second one. So I'm going to click the dimension, and this time I'm going to set it up before I go. So architectural and to an eighth. And I'm just going to kind of click from that point and just kind of come over. Alright, bring that down. Alright. So that goes to my dimensions. It looks good. I'm just going to save this again. Okay, so now that we have our dimensions done, I've noticed that I want to add some line to this. I have it on presentation, but the edges are turned off. So I want to turn the edges back on. And we also need to modify it as well so that the camera scene, the camera location is not saved with the scene, so that we can also update these to show the contextual trees that we're going to replace with the photorealistic trees in Photoshop. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to save that again. I'm going to go up to SketchUp again and open up my file. So I'll start using SketchUp. Just go open. I'll close the dialog boxes as well that I don't need. My final model. So what we want to do is make sure that so I have my scene selected. And, make sure that when you're on your all veg, when I select these, that everything is on. So make sure that your context layer is on, and then just update it appropriately if you need to. Also, when you update it, turn off your camera location. So for that one, I'm going to update that. And I'll go back to my section 2 good veg. And there, you should see that turned off. So that's how it should toggle on and off. And also I want to make sure that view, edge styles, edges are on. Okay. So I'm going to keep that going. So that's number 2. I'm going to go to do section number 1. So good veg should change. Okay. I'm not going to be concerned about the camera location, but I do want my edge styles. It looks like my edge styles are on anyway. Okay. And just let it do its thing. Great. So then I'll update that as well. And that should be just the good veg. Good. Update. And then I'll go to the section 1. All veg. I think it's coming on appropriately. Camera location, I don't want to be concerned about because I'm going to update it. You'll see why here in a second. I'm just going to, that looks good. Okay, and close these out, don't need to see those. And I just want to update that as well. I'll update that. I'll save this now, Control S for save. And because this is referenced in SketchUp, the changes that we've made will be reflected in layout. Okay, so that'll save out. Now I'll go back into layout and I'll click on both of these by holding shift, and then I'll say, oh, can't do that. Click on each one, update model reference. It'll render out and update. And you see that lines are now projected in there, so I can see my lines. I like that better. And I'll go up here and do the same thing, update model reference. And if it doesn't, make sure you go back. And then section 1, good veg. Make sure you save that again. And I'll update that again as well. And just go back to layout and click on that too. Let me just try this. And that should be scene 1, good veg. There we go. Okay. So now that we have our line working, that looks really good. That's going to be our first piece to save out. So I'm going to go File, Export, Options, High Quality. Okay. I'm going to my desktop project folder. I'm going to go into Photoshop because that's where we're going to be next. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call the new folder Elevation PDF Create. And I'm going to call this Good Veg. It'll kick out. Alright, so now you'll have the first piece of the puzzle. Alright, so I'll just close that out. So now what I want to do is now turn on the models with the context. So I'm going to click on this one and go to all veg, and it should render out for me. Alright. And same thing for this one, it should be section 2, all veg. Okay. Now I'm going to go File, Export. Same thing, Options, High. And I'm going to say all veg. Okay, so now I'll close that out and I'll save this again. And now I'll close that out, and the SketchUp, now I'll save that again and just close that out. Alright, I'll close the file. Close that and just close out of SketchUp altogether. And now I'll go into Photoshop. Close layout as well. So now I'm going to go File and Open, and navigate to that folder, the place where we just saved those at, the elevation PDFs. I'm going to open up both of those. I'm going to make sure that bounding media box is selected, not bounding box, but media box, and say OK. And the same thing, media box. Okay, so we're going to end up here actually. So I'm going to say this is going to be good veg. And I'm going to create a layer and call it white background. And I'm going to shift F5 to make that white. And then I'm going to go back over to my context, Control A, Control C, Control Shift V to paste in place, and you'll see that it's draped over, and this is going to be all veg. Alright, so now I'm going to get rid of all veg. I don't need that anymore. So don't save. Control O, navigate to the desktop again. We'll go into site imagery and we'll open all three of these. Okay, so I'm going to Control A. This is the Zelkova. Control C, copy, and go back to my good veg. Now I'll zoom into where the Zelkovas looks like they are. And right there, my Zelkovas. So I'm going to Control V. A tree comes in. And I'm going to create a group, and I'm going to call this placement trees, and I'm just going to pull that actually on top and pull that inside of that, and this is going to be my Zelkova. Okay, I'm going to Control T to transform and just make it big and make it fit the size. Looks like that's about right. Maybe even a little bit smaller. Okay, Control minus to kind of come out. Alright, so that's one. I'm gonna select the whole thing and copy, Control V to make two of them. And place it there. I'm just kind of eyeballing, using the other ones as a placement helper. And one more to come over. You can just Alt and copy two to move it. Alright, great. So those are my Zelkovas. Those look about right to me. Do I have any more down here? And I'm sure those would translate down here as well. So So it looks like I didn't turn my Zelkovas on, the bottom one, so I'll have to fix that, but we'll do that last. And if that happened to you, you just have to export the pieces back over. That Zelkova layer should have just been turned on as a reference. So, okay. Cool, I'm going to keep on going. So those are my Zelkovas for that. I'm going to merge two of these, holding Shift and just Control E to merge them. Turn them on and off. Okay. And I'm going to do a layer mask. Go to my, make sure black is selected, hit B from my brush. And what this does is it's going to help me mask some of these pieces because I wouldn't see all of that. So B, and cap locks off. Okay. So as I paint over that, you'll see that it disappears. Yeah. That's kind of right there like that. I'll do the same thing here, just create a mask and kind of cut that. Okay, there's my Zelkova. Looks like I have some pine back there too, or blue spruce. I'm gonna Control A, copy, come back here, Control V to drop it in, and Control T, make it a little bit smaller. Again, using the trees in the background as a reference. Just copying that over like that. And it looks like I have some more down here, so I'm just going to pull that one down as well, kind of toward the back. And okay, and I'm going to merge those just to make it easier to do this. I'm going to call this my pine, so I'm going to create a mask there as well, the same way I hit B for my brush, and I'm just going to kind of knock some of that off where it touches the building right there. That looks good to me. Okay, that looks good. Let me knock some of this away too. Let me see that. Kind of in the background, letting it fade. There you go. So it's not so prominent. Okay. Of course, we can put replacement trees actually Put that in there. And put it behind good veg. There we go. That looks better. And now I need to get that deciduous tree in there. So existing conditions, Control A, copy, come back here, Control V. I'll do these down here this time. And big old trees. Kind of like that big, I guess. And we'll place those kind of like that. And there we'll do one. And I'll do another one up there. Okay. And I'm going to just again to make it easier, I'm going to combine those. We'll call those canopy. And the canopy are going to be behind everything else. Turn the all veg off now. Okay, so now we can kind of see what we have. Zoom in some. Okay, looks pretty good to me. What we can do is also play with the colors of that some too. I don't need to do a mask because these are behind everything on this particular one, but you can play with the opacity to kind of tone those down some. And the same thing with the other ones, the ponds, you can tone them back a little bit because they're in the background. They should be, and these ponds will actually even be behind the canopy. Well, actually, we'll do that. No, we'll pull that in front. Okay, and then okay, so this is going to be this alcova. Okay, and I'll reduce some of those as well. It's to 80, and just knock that to 80 as well. Okay, and that's how to quickly replace your trees with more photorealistic looking trees in Photoshop. Again, I'll have to bring over that, so let's go back and just kind of get that knocked out of the way. So I'll go to Sketchup first, and I'll knock these away. I don't believe I need those. And start using. Final model. So I'll go to section 2, all veg, and let it do what it does. Alright, I want to make sure my Zelkovas are on too. And just Control save that. right click and then update. And this will just give us our Zelkova placement. Save again. Alright, and then I'll close that out. Go back into layout. Close that. Oh, go back into layout. Oh, force quit. Open an existing file. And I'm going to navigate to my desktop. It's going to update all. And it should render that scene out again, and we'll just kick that one out as a PDF. Okay, so now I'll just go File, Export one more time and make sure it's high quality. And then Desktop, Photoshop, Elevation, and this is all veg. And we'll replace it. Close it out, don't need to see it, and I will save that, close it out, don't need that anymore. And I'll just open the all veg, oops, open. Open that up. Control A, copy, don't need it anymore. Back here, Control Shift V, delete the previous one, and now I should be able to see my Zelkova placement a little bit easier. Turn off mode. Okay, and let me bring another one of those Zelkovas over. So bring that Zelkova, copy it, and just bring that Zelkova over. And looks like there's one there. Looks like it has one there as well. And I'm catching one right there as well. Okay, so I have my Zelkova there, and it should be on the same. Turn that off, and then turn canopy back on as well. And I'm gonna turn my Zelkova up a little bit so they stand out some from it. Okay. And there you have it. So now you've replaced your trees and you've updated it, so you have a photorealistic, semi-photorealistic elevation to demonstrate your design intent. So now what I want to do is save this. I'm going to save this as a PSD. So I'm going to come into my Photoshop and just call this elevation board. And make sure it's a PSD, Photoshop. Save. Okay, that's the first step. And then what I want to do is file, we're going to save as. And we're going to put this in our, let's navigate here, into finished pieces. Presentation boards, and this is going to be, I'm just going to say this is a JPEG actually, to flatten it, and elevation board is fine, and save. Maximum, yes. And there you have it. So you have that as a JPEG, so now you can combine this with your self-assessment rubric and upload it to Blackboard. If you have any questions, send me an email or come see me in the office or just catch me in studio.